Welcome to the Vision Driven Basketball Training Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Going to get into a great topic that I know is really going to help you guys out. Before we get into that, though, if you're on Apple Podcasts right now, if you could scroll down to the bottom of the page and leave a review for me, that would be great. Let me know what you think. And for those of you guys who are on YouTube, go ahead and leave a like and subscribe if you're new as well. Got a new podcast coming every single week, so be on the lookout for that. And, I always say this at the end of the episodes, but if you guys ever have questions for me, really, all of the podcasts that I make, every segment of it comes from questions that I get. So if you have questions for me, let me know. My best way to do that is to DM me on Instagram at Vision Driven Basketball. Best way to make sure that I'll see it. And, without further ado, we'll hop into it. So today, I kind of want to give you guys a full breakdown on how to get more playing time. Because this is an issue that, obviously a ton of players have, and I get a lot of questions on, how do I get more playing time? And, it's a very multifaceted response, right? The reason players work so hard in the off season is so that they can produce at a high level on the court, right? But if you don't get on the court, then you don't have a chance to produce at a high level, right? So how can you get onto the court? And we're going to talk about the exact steps you need to take to make sure you can do that if that's what you're struggling with right now. And, a lot of players really feel like, they've worked super hard in the off season, and then they come back and they aren't getting the playing time that they think that they deserve. And so we're going to talk step by step and going to break down exactly what it's going to take for you to get more playing time. So, when it comes to this answer, it's never a one size fits all for this specific problem. And I'm going to give you guys a few different things you need to think about for yourself. So if you need to pause this episode at all and give it a thought as to, is this me? Like, can I relate to this? Have I been in this situation? Do that, okay? It's going to help you in the long run. So you can gain and lose playing time for multiple reasons, for many different reasons. So one player probably won't be the same as another player. And so keep that in mind as we're going through this, and be honest with yourself throughout all these as well. And, that being said, though, many of these things I'm going to talk about are things that a lot of players struggle with generally. So I'm sure that there'll probably be multiple that may apply to you and that you may need to address if you want to get more playing time. But before we even get into that, the first thing to understand is that most coaches, the vast majority of coaches, just want to win games. That's what they care about. They just want to win games. They don't have any motives against you personally. They don't really care about anything other than winning games when it comes down to it. Obviously, I'm not saying that winning is the only thing, especially at youth level, right, where it's not necessarily like there's jobs on the line. But coaches want to win games. So they're going to put players on the floor who they feel like give them the best chance to win games. Ultimately, with good coaches, with the majority of coaches, even coaches who might not be great, all of them want to win, okay? And they're going to put out the players who they think give them the best chance to do that. Now, obviously, there may be exceptions to that. I understand not every situation is the same, but for the vast majority of coaches, so more than likely, if you're listening to this or watching this, probably you probably fall into that category. Your coach probably just wants to win and he doesn't hate you for any reason. He just might pick somebody else over you because he thinks they give him a better chance to win. More than likely, that's the case. So understand that, first of all. A major theme we're going to go throughout this podcast is the theme of honesty, okay? Because it's very, very important that you guys are honest with yourselves when it comes to what I'm going to tell you. When you're thinking to yourself, like, answering, is this me? Have I done this? Is this something that I need to change? Like, it's not going to help you or anybody to lie to yourself about anything, okay? This is a time where you need to be honest. You need to say, like, yeah, you know what? I probably could have done that better. I probably could do better at this. I probably need to change my focus and do this now, okay? This is something that you all need to think about because that's the first step to getting in this. If you're not willing to be honest with yourself, then is this a waste of your time, okay? And you're not going to be able to get better. That's the first part of moving past where you've been and getting to where you want to get to, is being honest with yourself and figuring out what these actual what the problem is, okay? And you need to ask yourself, first of all, do you actually deserve more playing time, or do you just want more playing time? There's a difference between those two things. If you deserve more playing time, it's because you feel like you've earned that playing time. You feel like when you've been put in situations to produce, you've done it. You feel like there's no exterior factors that you've neglected that would cause you to not play. There are no other things that would prevent you from getting more time. That is a case where maybe you feel like you deserve it. But if and also maybe you're better, maybe you skill wise you do deserve it. Okay. But that is different from wanting more playing time. You can want to play, but are you good enough to play? Are you better than the other players who are getting more time than you? Okay? We're going to break down some more reasons why you might not be getting playing time, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to being honest with yourself and where you're at. If you are sitting behind a bunch of players who are better than you, then there's no, like, you can't be upset with that, right? Because again, coaches want to win. They're going to play the best players, so you can't be upset about anything like that. So you have to ask that question for yourself. And, everybody wants to play more. Everybody wants to play more, but not everybody deserves to play more, okay? Also, I mean, end of the day, there's only 5 players on the court at one time, right? So not everybody can get more playing time. And like I said, not everybody puts in the work to actually deserve more playing time, okay? And, it really is a matter of being honest. I'm sure a lot of you probably have heard of Dre Baldwin, who's on YouTube, former pro player, does a lot of kind of motivational stuff now. But, Dre's a guy that I was watching back when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. So, man, it's been a while. But I just read an email from him the other day where he was talking about one of his teammates, I believe it was back in high school, where his teammate was basically like going off to his coach about how, coach, I should be playing more, blah, 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 blah. And, the coach was like, okay, cool. And so the dude got to play way more the next game, and he turned the ball over more than 10 times. And at that point, Dre's teammate was like, oh, okay, I get it. And then there was no more discussion about it. Okay? Moral of the story is be careful for what you ask for, You might want more playing time, but are you ready to actually get more playing time? Are you good enough to actually be put in a position to do that? Or are you going to be that guy, right? Because if that were the case, if it's just a case of, I just got to go say, coach, I should be playing more, coach, I need more playing time, but you're not actually good enough to get it, that could be you right there. And at the end of the day, if a coach wants to win, he's not going to put his team in that position. Okay, that's just a quick story to kind of illustrate that point. The other thing to consider is maybe you are good enough. Maybe from a skill perspective, maybe you have the prerequisite skills that maybe are better than some other people on your team. Now you need to consider what role you might be filling or not filling. Okay, you need to consider the system that you guys play in, right? So if you can only play big man and you can't shoot and you can't dribble, but your coach likes to play, a 5-out with 5 guys who can shoot and dribble. Well, it's going to be tough for you to get as much playing time as you might want because obviously you don't fill the role that your coach wants. Okay? Maybe there's going to be some times where he might go with the big or something like that, but generally you're going to be kind of stuck in a specific area that your coach might not like to go to all that often. Okay? So be cognizant of that. Maybe it's a case where you're a great ball handler. Okay, but maybe you're the 3rd string point guard because the 2 point guards ahead of you can both shoot the ball better. All right, maybe you're a better ball handler than them, but you can't shoot it as well. And maybe your coach has a system where he needs everybody on the floor to be able to shoot the basketball, especially his guards. If you can't do that, you just don't fill the exact role that coach might have. Maybe there are other teams where they just want their point guard to bring the ball up, get the offense going, and let their wings or the bigs do the scoring. Maybe that's a system. And, in that case, maybe if you're more of a shooter, then maybe you don't fit well in that system, okay? Maybe you don't fit well as that point guard. So you really need to consider, what does your team run? What does your coach want out of his players? What roles do each player fill? If there's a person who you think is worse than you who's playing, ask yourself why it is that they're playing. Do they do something better than you? And that might not even be necessarily skill-wise. Are they better at communicating than you? Do they talk on the floor? Okay, do they take charges? Are they always in the right position on defense? Do they run the floor hard? Do they rebound the ball well? Those are all things to consider that can give a player who you might feel is worse than you more playing time than you because he just happens to fill a specific role that coach wants. Okay? So that's something to consider as well. It's not just about your skills and abilities. It's about the role that your coach needs to fill. He's going to put guys in those specific roles that are going to help him to win the game. And if he doesn't feel like you can do that for him, you're not going to play as much. Okay? So this can be for literally any skill. And, that's something that needs to be considered because that is more of a big picture thing, okay? From your perspective, you're like, okay, I'm this good, I should be getting this much time. But your coach is thinking, okay, we're going to run this and this, and we're going to build to this. I want these specific guys with these specific skill sets to be doing this for me, okay? The next thing to think about is your habits in practices and pregame. This is such a big part. And unfortunately, I think a lot of players ignore this. It all starts with, did you show up for team workouts in the offseason? Right? Because unless you have a legitimate reason as to why you didn't or why you couldn't, if you didn't do that, there's no reason for you to complain about lack of playing time. Because to a lot of coaches, it just shows a lack of you really caring all that much. Okay? And that's one thing right there. But also, at the end of the day, coaches are going to go with guys that they're familiar with because they're going to trust them more. We're going to talk about trust a little bit more, but they trust those guys more. They've seen them more. They've been around them more. They're going to get the benefit of the doubt over you, even if, again, you might be a little bit better. He might just trust that other guy more than he trusts you. And at that point, because you didn't show up, that's an issue. Okay? So playing time equals trust. All right. When you get more playing time, it's because your coach trusts you more. If you get less playing time, it's because your coach doesn't trust you as much. Okay. And as a coach, we don't want to depend on somebody who we can't trust, right? Even really in anything, you don't depend on somebody if you don't feel like you can trust them to get the job done. It's the same thing in basketball. You're not going to put a player in a position to play a lot of minutes if you don't trust that he can produce for you. Okay, unless you absolutely have to play that person. And that being said, we can talk about your habits in practice. Okay, do you show up late to practice? That's a big one, right? Do you have respect for your coach's time, for your teammates' time? Are you constantly late to things? Are you constantly late to meetings or to film sessions? Or if you're supposed to be at the game, an hour before, are you constantly only there 45 minutes before? Okay? When you get to practice, are you the guy who's just launching half-court shots, kind of messing around, waiting for practice to start, or are you overworking on some sort of skill that you're trying to get better at or that you need to have ready to go for that day? Okay, there's a big difference you can tell in players who prepare and players who don't, and that is a major factor when it comes to who you can trust. Do you miss practices often? Right? Is there a million reasons for why? Oh, I had a doctor's appointment. Oh, I had to do this. Oh, I had that. I had this. Are you missing a bunch of practices? Because again, if you're missing practices, you're immediately you're going to lose out on trust from your coaches because you're not going to be going through the sets they're running. You're not going to be going through the drills that they're going through. You're not going to be going through the game planning that they're going to do. So how can you expect to play if you're missing practices? If you're being late to practices, if you are not respecting the time of your team, it's gonna be tough for you to really have a leg to stand on when you want more playing time. Do you give great effort in practice, or is it a day-to-day thing? If you're a little bit tired, or if you don't really feel like practicing, are you kind of going 50%, going 75% that day? If you are upset that you didn't play as much the night before, do you kind of slack off and not really care about anything in practice? That's something that, again, you have to be consistent. If you're not consistent with your effort and your practices, it's tough for coaches to trust you with that as well. And that's something you need to consider. Do you complain about things in practice? Do you complain about having to run? Do you complain about having to play this position? Do you complain about having to do this or having to do that? That to me is self-explanatory, and hopefully that's not you, because again, if that's you and you're complaining about playing time, then that should be your answer for you right there as to why you're not playing. Do you accept criticism from your coaches and use it to make you better. So this is something that a lot of players, especially these days, struggle with, is just taking criticism and using it, because criticism is a very good thing. I've talked about this before on my podcast all the time, but being criticized by your coaches is really the best thing that could happen to you, because, again, at the end of the day, coaches want to win games. So they want their players to be as good as possible and as ready as possible so that they can win games. They can be in the best position to win games. So your coaches want you to be at your best. So everything that they do is with that in mind. They're saying, if I'm going to criticize or yell at this player, it's because I want them to get this so that they can play better, so that our team can play better. So, coaches are one of those rare people in your life that, like, you being your best directly helps them, right? So therefore, there's no reason for them to do something to sabotage you or to push you down or to for no reason, right? There's going to be a purpose behind it. So if you're able to take that criticism and listen to what they're actually saying, maybe you get yelled at, but instead of being upset because coach yelled at you, think about, like, what is he actually saying to me though? Maybe he yelled at me, but he was actually saying, hey, you need to get farther over into help so that you're in a position to take a charge. Maybe that was what he was saying to you. Now you need to do that and be able to take it and do better. Maybe he yelled at you for something, and but actually what he was yelling at you for was he wants you to sprint the lanes, right? He wants you to sprint the lanes so you can get out in transition and you guys can get layups and get open shots in transition. Okay, so consider those things. Like, when players can't take criticism, again, to a coach, it means I can't trust them, right? I can't trust them in the heat of battle. They're gonna be spending time being offended over things instead of taking what I'm saying and using it to be better. Okay, because the best teams are teams that don't have guys who get their feelings hurt by their coaches coaching them, right? So, is that you? Because if that is, that's a problem, and that will cost you playing time. Do you communicate with your teammates on the practice floor? Are you vocal on the court? Do you talk on defense? Are you encouraging your teammates, when you're going through drills? Are you a person that your coach, again, can trust? That's how you develop that trust as well, being vocal, doing all those little things on the floor. And if you don't do those things, then, again, that's something that you're missing out on. And end of the day, are you focused and locked in the whole time? Right? Do you go up and down? Does your effort vary up and down throughout practice? Does your focus vary up and down throughout practice? Do you zone out a lot? Right? Do you make do you make repeated mistakes because you aren't focused? That's a problem as well. And a lack of any of these, right, can cause you to lose trust with your coaches, and therefore it's going to cause you to lose playing time. And again, an example might be you show up to practice late. Every couple practices you're late, like you're just constantly late, and now all of a sudden, like, your coaches, like, they're thinking about, man, like, why is he always late, right? His teammates all show up on time, but you're late. Okay, like that's an issue. If you miss, you're missing practices time and time again when you're having doctor's appointments scheduled during practice. Like, when you're showing that your first priority is not basketball, that's a problem as well. If your coach says, if your coach criticizes you and gets on you about something, and you just you shut down and you decide, like, whatever, coach, and that's your response to it, then they're going to lose trust in you as well. There's all these things that happen during practices that put you in position to actually get playing time in games. And if you mess up those things, you're going to lose out on that. So I kind of mentioned it before, but we can also talk about pregame. Are you the last one to get out of the locker room to go warm up? Right? Are you the one who's kind of goofing around, doing whatever, just hanging out before the game, again, shooting crazy shots that you're never going to shoot in a game, just messing around, ready to go? If that's you, and then you get to the game and you're not playing as much, that's an issue you need to fix. Your approach to the game needs to be better. And this is something that I see coaching youth basketball, coaching high school basketball, is a lot of times players who want more playing time also are the ones who have the worst habits. Okay, because especially those players who ability-wise might be able to have more playing time, usually the reason they don't is because their habits are not good. And so as a coach, I'm like, I'm not going to play you over this other kid because He has a better approach in practice. He takes criticism better. He does these things better. I trust him more if things go poorly than I trust you. Okay? Because you don't show me those habits on a day-to-day basis. And I don't have that trust in you. So if your habits aren't good, don't expect your coaches to trust you more. Just it's not how life works. So that's got to change. And then we can talk about in games, right? If you get put into a game and you mess up a play or you forget a rotation or you make some other extremely avoidable mental mistake, and then that's something that will keep you off the floor because your coach is going to put you in. You finally get your chance to prove yourself. You go in there. You don't know the play. You don't know the play call. Well, what's your coach supposed to do? He's going to go back to the guy who was already playing ahead of you and knows the play. Okay? You need to, and I talked about this in my podcast, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, where I talked about essentially, what is it was like 95 how to separate yourself from 95% of other players, and it was all about controlling those things you can control with knowing the plays. Okay, because again, if that's your thing, and it's the crazy thing to me is players will be like, coach, I feel like I should play more, and then they get put in the game and they don't know what they're doing. You don't know the plays, you don't know the defenses, you don't know any of the calls. So clearly you haven't been paying attention in practice or doing anything extra to learn anything or asking any questions or retaining any sort of information. So you can't be don't be ready for it. Like Dre Baldwin's teammate. Don't ask for something and then get it and then not be ready for it. That's another way to very, very, very quickly lose trust with your coaches, especially if you go and have a conversation with them about, hey, coach, I really, I want to know what I need to do to play more. And your coach gives you that opportunity and you blow it, right? You blow it. You don't know the plays. You make some simple mental mistake that's very, very avoidable, okay? To be honest with you, when I see that, to me, it makes me think, oh, he doesn't care. He doesn't really care about being here. Because if he did care, he'd know the plays. Knowing the plays is all about whether or not you want to know them, right? It's not, obviously you're going to miss shots. You're going to turn the ball over. You're going to do things. You're going to get scored on sometimes. Those are unavoidable. But if you don't know the plays, to me, it makes me think, oh, you don't really care. Because if you did care, you'd go to practice. Maybe you aren't getting in practices all that much to run through the plays, but you'd come talk to a coach after, write out the plays on a piece of paper, and you'd study those plays so that when you're put in a position to do them, you can go in and you can run those plays, right? So to me, it's you probably don't really care all that much. Maybe that's not true. Maybe you do care, but that's the impression it gives off. And you don't, again, you're going to lose some trust right there. You lose a lot of trust right there. Okay, so control those things that you can control. Because that's how you know who cares and who doesn't, is who controls the things that they have control over. Who puts in the work, the time, and the effort to actually do those things, and who doesn't. So, after you've done all this self-evaluation, which again, if you guys feel like you need to go back and listen to it again, maybe write down some stuff that you think applies to you. Think about it. Really take a minute to think about what exactly, what categories you might fall into with these. And after you've done all of that, it can be helpful to go to your coach and ask them about it, okay? And there's a couple things you need to keep in mind when you do this, though. You do not want to go to them out of anger or resentment or being, just frustration. You want to be rational with your conversation. You want to, tell them your points and ask them for what their thoughts on it are. Really, that's what you want to do. You want to, here's how I would go about it. I would say, hey, coach, maybe you say, hey, coach, can we talk after practice? Or maybe after practice, you say, hey, coach, can I talk to you for a second? And, you say, and also, hey, before we get to this real quick, don't do it after a game. Don't be one of the players who is going to your coach directly after a game, especially if really win or lose. Actually, it probably would be worse if you win. Don't go to your coach directly after a game and say, coach, what do I need to do to get more playing time? Don't do that. That's not a good look for you at all. That's really just it's probably just going to piss off your coaches, to be honest with you. I would not recommend that you do that. And what I would recommend is that if you're going to go talk to your coach about playing time, do it at least a day after the game. Okay, you can do it at practice. You can do it whenever. Don't go to them before a game and ask them about it. Don't go to them directly after a game and ask them about it. Game days, forget about it. Don't send them a text after a game. Don't do that. It's a bad look for you, and it's going to make you look very, very, very immature. It's a very, very immature way to go about it. If you're going to talk to your coach about playing time, do it probably after a practice, okay? Or maybe you see him throughout the day at school or whatever. Don't do it any time around a game. Don't do it. So what you're going to want to do is go up to your coach when you have that conversation, be like, hey, coach, can you tell me what I need to do to get more playing time? And, any good coach is going to give you an answer, most likely a pretty honest answer. If you come at them in a respectful way, most good coaches will respect that and give you an honest answer. Okay? So if you want an honest answer, don't be offended when you don't like the answer. If the answer is, well, listen, you just aren't that good. Like, you just aren't. We have 5 guys at your position who are better than you. That's why you don't play. That might be your answer, right? I can tell you all these things, and you can think to yourself, oh, I think it's this. I think it's because I don't do this in practice, or maybe I need to do this better. If your coach says to you, like, oh, it's just because those guys are better than you. Well, maybe you can ask why, like, what do I need to do? Like, what exactly are they better at that I need to get better at? That's something you can always ask as a follow-up, but that's more of a long-term problem. If those guys are all better than you, that comes to, okay, in season, you're really not going to make big gains in terms of your abilities. That's more of an off-season thing, okay? But if he says to you, like what we were talking about, your approach in practice isn't very good. I don't like your effort in practice. You don't take criticism well. You don't do these things well. Then accept those answers. Don't try and debate it. Don't try and be like, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's the coach at the end of the day. So if you don't like what he says, it doesn't really matter. He's the one who determines if you play or not. So if you don't listen to what he's saying, then that's kind of your loss. Okay, so go, listen to what he has to say, accept it, and then do what you can to change that thing. If he's saying that you don't take criticism well, think to yourself about situations where you probably haven't taken it well. He's probably not making it up. He probably wants to win games, right? And at this point, you probably just aren't in a position to where you're the best option for that. Okay, so that's something to consider a lot. And again, that's something that is it all comes back to, you need to approach this conversation respectfully. Okay, you don't want to come in there and be like, coach, I should be playing more. Coach, I deserve more playing time. That makes you look arrogant, and it really makes you seem like, it comes across as disrespectful as well, because now you're questioning your coach's decision, because it's probably not just them, probably the assistants all have a say in who's getting what playing time, doing all these things. You don't be the person who's going or saying you deserve this or you deserve that, or they messed this up, or they should have done this differently. That's not your place to say. You need to come across this as not putting them on the defensive. When you go at them saying you deserve this, or coach, you did this wrong, they're going to be defensive with you. Probably aren't going to get as good of an answer as you might like. Okay, because they're going to say, okay, that's pretty immature. Again, losing trust, because it's going to seem like you are just coming at them with anger, resentment. It's not going to be helpful for you at all. Okay, so again, with any sort of good coach, if you approach them and you say, hey, coach, can you tell me what I need to do to get more playing time? They're going to give you an answer. You need to be able to take that. Now, there could be exceptions to that. There could be coaches who aren't great, coaches who are not confident in what they're doing. A good coach who's confident in his choices and in their decisions will have no issue being honest with you and saying, hey, this is why. Like, this is what's happened. But a coach who might not be as confident in what they're doing, who might have some other things that they're considering, they might not want to answer you. They might not like having a conversation with you about that. But at the end of the day, like, that is what it is. That's what happens. That is what it is. You want to give yourself at least the opportunity to ask that question, okay? Because you're already not playing as much as you want to, so you really have nothing to lose and everything to gain from that conversation. So don't be afraid of having that conversation. It can be very, very helpful if you approach it the right way. If you approach it the wrong way, it can hurt you a lot. So don't approach it on the attack. Okay, don't approach it being angry about something. Be genuinely ask questions on why, on what you need to do. Okay, or why this is happening, what you need to do, and that goes into, before we wrap this part up, what not to do. Okay, because there are some things that you should not do if you want more playing time, and these are very, very common mistakes that players fall into. And the first thing you need to consider is that you need to be skeptical of what your parents tell you and what your friends tell you. Okay, and what I mean by that is, especially your parents, they want what's best for you, and obviously they're very, very biased towards you. Okay, so their opinion, there's a good chance that it might not necessarily be correct, because they're so biased in your favor that they might be ignoring or missing some things that are actually also a factor. Okay, that maybe they don't want to admit, or maybe they just don't see. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people or that they're trying to lie to you or anything like that. It just literally might mean they want you to have all the success and everything that you want, and they're going to kind of rationalize things to go into your favor. So essentially, if you go home and you're complaining to your parents about playing time, a lot of time you're just preaching to the choir about it, because they're going to agree with you. They're going to say, yeah, I agree, all this stuff. And, maybe you have a parent who will tell you the truth about what they see. Maybe they can be objective about it, but a lot of times they will not be objective about it. They're going to be on your side about it. And if your solution to everything is just go home and complain to your parents about it, nothing is going to get better for you, and you're just going to feel more resentful towards your coaches, towards your teammates, towards whatever, and that's not a place you want to be at. Okay, so be skeptical what your parents say. They might come to you and they might say, hey, like, why did your coach do this? Like, you should have done that. You've got to be able to be like, well, you know what, like, it's, maybe, don't just take that at face value. Don't just be like, oh yeah, my parents said it, so that definitely must be what I should think as well. Right? Your coach might have a reason for it. You might even know the reason for it. So again, your parents on the outside in. Your parents are not in the gym with your team every day. They aren't in the locker room with your team every day. They don't really know what exactly goes on. They aren't in your coaches, when your coaches are having their discussions with each other, they aren't in that. They aren't in the huddle, right? They aren't watching the game film. Okay? So understand that and keep that in your minds. Okay? You cannot always trust what your parents or your close friends will tell you about getting more playing time, about this, about that. Okay, they don't know the ins and outs like you do, like your team does, like your coaches do. Okay, so that's not always the best source to get your information from. And the other thing to consider is that you do not want to end up becoming a cancer to your team. Okay, because that will ruin teams. And I've been on teams where that's happened, where there are a couple guys who, it might literally be one or two guys who are just upset with their playing time. And because of that, they're in the locker room complaining about the coaches, complaining about other players who are getting more playing time. And maybe you've probably been around this before, where you'll have one of your teammates say to you, like, man, why is he playing more than me? Like, man, what's up with coach? Like, why is coach yelling at me today for that? Like, why is coach playing him more than me? Like, this is so stupid. That is not what you want to do, because if you want to win games, right, you want to be part of a winning team. Here's the thing, and I talk about this. It's one thing to not play a lot when your team wins 7 games. Okay, that's not great. Your team goes 7-20 and you didn't play. Yeah, that's not great. If your team goes undefeated, your team wins 25 games and makes a run in the state tournament, even if you didn't play, you're a part of a team that was really, really good, right? Where you get to go on those same trips to go play those playoff games. Like, you get to be a part of something that's great. You go win a championship with your team, you get a medal, right? When that team, when your team name goes up on that banner in your gym, you're a part of that team. Anytime you walk into that gym, you say, yeah, I was on that team, right? So it's a lot better to if you're not playing, at least have it be on a good team, right? At least have it be on a team where you can say, yeah, we won a lot of games, right? Would you rather be able to say at the end of the day, yeah, I didn't play a lot on that team, but we won we won our conference championship that year? Or would you rather say, I didn't play a lot on that team, but, we won 7 games? Obviously, the first choice is a lot better for you, okay? So you do not want to take this lack of playing time and use it to destroy your team, because you can destroy your team with your attitude towards it, okay? If you're in the locker room complaining to your teammates about your coaches, or you're complaining to your teammates about other certain teammates who you feel like shouldn't be getting more playing time than you, all these things. Again, I've seen it firsthand where I've heard, guys will say to me like, hey, man, why is he playing more than me? Why is coach not playing me? Like, this is so dumb. Why is coach pulling me for this? All these things. That spreads so quickly, right? Because then all of a sudden some other person starts to feel slighted, and then they think, oh, you know what? Maybe I should be upset because this guy was mad too. So maybe we can both be mad about this. Someone else starts to get upset about it. All of a sudden you have a bunch of people resenting each other, not actually talking about it at all, but just kind of in the background, in kind of little side conversations, being all mad at each other. That's not a proper way to handle things ever. Like, you should never handle things that way. That's going to ruin everything that you ever do. Okay? Go to the source and fix it. Get it done. If your issue is that you feel like your coach isn't playing you, ask to meet with your coach after a practice. Say, hey, coach, can you tell me what I need to do to play more? What do I need to change? What do I need to get better at? Like, what do I need to do? Okay? Have that honest conversation with your coach. That's the best way to go about it, right? And if you feel like, you don't want to go to your coach, go to maybe one of your team captains or one of the older guys on your team and say, hey, would you be able to talk to coach for me? Because, I don't know if I don't feel comfortable doing it or whatever. Or maybe you have them facilitate something for you, okay? Don't be the guy who's going around complaining about things, okay? There's a book by an author named John Gordon. It's called The Energy Vampire, or The Energy Bus, I should say. And it's all about, it's about energy, but specifically there's a part of it that talks about energy vampires, which are basically people in all areas of life, but with teams specifically, who suck the energy out of the team. Right? And they do this by complaining. They do this by trying to undermine people, by never actually addressing any problems, but by harboring on resentment towards people, and then using that to try and destroy people, being passive aggressive with their remarks, and overall just being a bad teammate. And energy vampires are reasons that teams lose. And it talks about, you're driving your energy bus, right? You're the driver of the energy bus. You got to make sure you don't have energy vampires on your bus, okay? Because that's gonna slow your bus down. That's gonna end up ruining you, right? You want to create a great atmosphere, and that's the biggest thing that I'll say. Like, when I've been on teams that were good, there was always a good atmosphere, a good culture, right? Guys bought into their roles that they had, and if guys had issues with what was happening, they were willing to go talk, right? They were willing to talk to coaches, to have honest conversations with teammates about different things. Teams that I've been on that haven't been that way, teams that have been, not great, are the teams where you don't have guys who are willing to have those conversations. You have a lot of immature guys who just want to sit around and complain about things and, talk about how this is unfair and all these different things. But at the end of the day, again, the teams who win are the teams who are all together, right? All together, no energy vampires. There's literally been times in my life where, we'll lose players from a year to the next year, right? We'll lose a couple guys, and that will make our team better. Like guys who maybe even played big roles, right? But we might lose them, and oh man, all of a sudden the entire culture, our entire atmosphere gets better because you lose one or two guys who might have been those energy vampires. Okay, so don't be that person, because at the end of the day, your teammates who care, probably a lot of the guys who are your friends, and maybe some of those starters, some of those guys who are getting time, if you're friends with them, you respect them, you don't want to ruin their season, their career, by being that person who hurts the team. Okay? So take care of your problem. Go talk to your coaches if you need to, okay? Truly evaluate for yourself, because at the end of the day, it really, you need to be able to take responsibility for yourself. Now, there are certain times where there are coaches who might just not like you, right? They might play favorites. Okay, I understand there are bad coaches out there. Okay, there are some who are out there, right? But you also need to consider that in most cases, it's going to be something you are doing that is causing you to not play. It's going to be something that you control. Could be usually it's going to be your skills, your abilities, but it could also be your attitude or your effort or your approach to things. Those are all reasons and all things that are very, very common when it comes to this. So that's really what I want to say about that. Be willing to take that personal responsibility for yourself, and don't just be a person who's going to try and blame it on your coach or your teammates or your situation or whatever. The way you fix things is, again, being honest, being able to say, yeah, I've done this poorly. I need to do better at this. I could do better at this. This is something that I've been ignoring, but I have control over it, so I'm going to make sure that I take control over it, okay? And at the end of the day, if you want to get more playing time, that's what you need to be able to do, okay? So just to recap kind of real quickly those points that we had talked about, the first key is honesty and self-evaluation, okay? Being able to say, am I doing this in practice, right? Do I need to change this? Am I good enough to get more playing time? Do I deserve more playing time, or do I just want more playing time? Okay. Number 2 is you need to be able to evaluate your habits in practice, your habits in pregame, and you also your how much control you have over those things that you have control over. Okay. If your habits aren't great and you ignore the controllable things, well, again, it all goes back to you're going to lose trust with your coaches. Trust is massive, okay? Remember, it's all about building up trust with those coaches. If they don't trust you, you're not going to play. Number 3 is respectfully go have a conversation with your coach about these things. And again, don't come at this with anger or resentment or saying what you deserve or what you should get or how your coach messed up. Your line should be, Coach, can you tell me what I need to do to get more playing time? Come at it from a respectful angle, and a lot of times you're going to get a good response, and you're going to have a good conversation with your coach. And a lot of times that conversation alone can build up trust with your coach, okay? Especially if they see that you're starting to work on those things that they tell you to work on, okay? They're going to respect that, and that's going to help you to build that trust. And number 4, be skeptical of what your parents and your close friends might tell you, might bring up to you, and be careful, because a lot of times they're going to be yes men for you. They're going to tell you what you want to hear, and they're not always going to tell you what the actual truth of the matter is. Okay, and then number 5, don't be an energy vampire. Do not be the person who ruins a team because you're upset about something. At the end of the day, you're going to look back and you're going to feel bad about that, and you're going to look at guys who, you might have hurt them because you were upset about something that probably was your fault at the end of the day. Okay, so those 5 things, something to consider. Again, all about being honest with yourself and your ability to do that. So, hopefully this helps you guys out if you've been struggling with getting more playing time. If you guys have any more questions, like I said before, make sure you DM me at Vision Driven Basketball. Even if you don't have any questions, go ahead and give me a follow on there, so you guys will see every update we have. And again, I appreciate you guys. If you're on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and leave a review. If you have not, YouTube, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.